What's up, guys? Jordan from Bennett's Customs. Back on the race car once again. It's early Saturday morning, coffee's brewing. The fire is stoked, and we're ready to get this thing ticking along. So on today's episode, basically I'm just going to go through shortening the rear drive shaft and torque tube. As you can see, we have a very small section now that we've sectioned and shortened everything. So we need to tick that off. We need to get the rear trailing arm set up, as well as the front wishbones. Once that's done, this thing's kind of square wheelbase wise to each tire, and then we can kind of start continuing forward. So just crossing off more of the list. So let's get into it.
Okay, so as you can see, we don't have a torque tube or a drive shaft in yet, so that's what we're going to try and achieve to build right now. This is the stock Model A torque tube, which is what we're using. And as you can see, if I were to hold it up into the original, area of where that would have been, there's a whole lot that needs to be sectioned out. I think it's nearly about 600 mil from memory that I need to take out of this to make this work, as well as the inside drive shaft itself. So what we'll end up doing is, I do have a sleeve that will slide over this. I will section this. I will drill and plug weld or rosette weld the sleeve. Obviously we're gonna bevel or V the edge of these when they go together, so that we do have an area to obviously get a lot of penetration. We'll end up probably TIG welding this, and I'll turn the amperage right up and try and get a few really good passes on it. And then we'll slide that sleeve over top, and then we'll weld both ends, rosette weld as well, and hopefully that should stand the lack of power that this flathead will probably make. But basically you can kind of see, again, we do need to take out quite a bit of this. So we're gonna get some measurements. Also have to take into consideration, I have made this plate that goes onto the back of the transmission. So anything that I do have to take out that 3/8 or 10 mil, I believe that plate is. So yeah, basically we're gonna get the coupler on here. We're gonna make some measurements. We'll take this over. Unfortunately, I just snapped the blade in the bandsaw, which is a pain in the butt. So we'll be doing this the old-fashioned way with a bit of tape and the grinder. So I'm definitely gonna try and take my time to make sure I get quite a square line. And we'll get this thing shortened up and welded and installed. All right, so what I have here is just a little jig I set up, nothing simple, just a bit of box tubing on either side. This is the exact desired length that I need. And what I've done is just square everything up off the table. I've just clamped on the front of the torque tube, and I have the rear section. Unfortunately, with Model A torque tubes, they have such a drastic taper, unlike a V8 rear end, you know, say like a 40 Ford rear end. There's usually a large flat spot that, you know, the pipe is even, or tube, sorry, is even the entire way. And then at the end it tapers, so there's quite a bit of a section where you can actually take out, and you only have to do one weld. Where this, unfortunately, you know, this piece was cut off the back of here, and this actually just slides straight over it. So, and there's tons of play. So what I've had to do is I'm gonna have to do 2 cuts. So I have this one here and this one, and basically I need to fill this void with a piece of this that has enough taper where it still picks up the back of this and still picks up the back of that as well. So I'm just going to do a few measurements with the calipers, make sure I get kind of my inside and outside diameters right, and then I'll try and cut a piece of this out, and then we will just have 2 welds on the torque tube, which is totally fine as long as you got a nice V cut into both sides and good penetration. There's nothing really wrong with it. So let's do a few measurements, and then we'll get this thing tacked into place and see what it looks like. One thing too, made across the street, it's got a really nice steam clean wash pod. So I'm gonna go and throw these parts in there and get them nice and clean before we prep to weld them. Do yourself a favor and become friends with someone who has one of those wash pods. Man, just literally works so well. Even takes old paint off. It's just steam cleans everything so well. So we were able to get rid of all the grease, all the grime. Just gonna give this a quick wire wheel. We're gonna get this thing tacked into place. So we got this all jigged up and was able to get a few tacks on it. I actually lined up the weld on this one. One thing you also want to make sure, which I totally forgot about this while I was tacking it, so I did have to go back, cut a few tacks and spin this, but this bottom coupler that actually bolts to the axle itself, you have to make sure that these holes are lined up so that your radius rod and speedo are in the exact same situ as it was from factory. So basically everything's lined up These are horizontally and vertically lined up exactly what this is, and I just put a square off both edges to make sure that everything was going to be where it should. So that is basically a tiny little torque tube with 2 little steps. So I will just bolt this in quickly to make sure everything's going to fit properly. All right, so we got it mocked up in place. Seems to, yeah, look really well. And this basically, that coupler sits up against this one. And then we have the V8 couplers that go straight onto the bolt. They bolt onto that on both sides. So that should, you know, hold everything into place. And underneath, this is going to be a little bit tricky, because we need to somehow take this trailing arm that's extremely long, or radius rod, whatever you want to call it, and we need to make that go from here to there. And if you look, that's level about there. So it's going to be very tricky to get those underneath. So we're going to have to try and figure something out. Otherwise, I might just be able to make another mount that comes down that picks those up, which is totally doable. So, but yeah, I think it'll do the trick.
So we got the Model A spring set on the table, and I just punched out these old bushings. They, yeah, were just really worn out. So luckily I actually used an old 1/2 inch extension that I had that I always use as a punch, and it works really well for stuff. And this actually just punched these out perfectly. So I got some new ones here that I'm going to press in now, and yeah, we'll be on our way. So we popped the pin out, and now they're all individual. What I'm going to do is just go through and clean each one of these, and probably just bevel the edges of these just a little bit. So then we'll press in the new bushings, clean them all up, paint them, and this pack will be ready to go.
So just wanted to show you a little before and after. Basically that there is an after, and that's before. And what I'm doing too in the ends is, you can see the ends of these, they're just usually like chopped in a big break. And what I'm doing is just rounding them off. You know, it's probably not the crucial or does anything for the suspension. Maybe a little bit of a rounder edge is nicer. Like if you roll this edge, it kind of slides nicer on the other leaf spring, but it's just an aesthetics thing. I just really like the look when they're kind of all nice and round like that, rather than that kind of sharp pointed or the 45-degree kind of cuts that they've done. Also, what I am using on the grinder is just this stripping wheel. They do work really, really well, called Rapid Strip. But basically this one here, if you were to compare, that is wire wheeled, just with your standard wire wheel there. And the one on the right hand side is the one that's stripped. It works a lot faster and definitely takes off all that kind of surface rust and old paint and everything. So we'll get them all cleaned up and then get them prepped, and we'll potentially probably just put these back together as is, and we'll do a few dry fitments to make sure that we get everything correct. And then once that is done, we will break down each piece and just put a little bit of paint on them and a little bit of grease between each one. Alright, so we've got every leaf spring basically cleaned up, sanded, a radius to all the edges as well, just to make them, look a little bit nicer. So what we're going to do is just put this back together for now, do a couple more mock-ups until we blow everything down for paint. So let's get this back together and we'll see what it looks like. One thing I do need to replace are these shackles. They're toast and they have two little hairline cracks in both sides, but they will work for the meantime just to get this set up, and hopefully we can start figuring out what we're gonna do for the split wishbones. Okay, we got some new U-bolts here, which is really nice. Fingers crossed they fit. If you're not, we'll make them fit. Okay, so first of all, let's get one of these shackles through. Super happy with the way the front end's turning out. Basically, with the frame being dead level, I didn't actually have to reverse this eye on the front leaf spring, which was great. So the radiuses, cleaning them up, looks really nice. I'm super happy with the way the holes look in the axle as well. And we got the brake drums. They've been cut as well, so we don't need any front brakes on this. So I was able to eliminate quite a bit of material. I'll actually just run you over here and show you. These are them there. They actually had those little savers on them too, so they don't swell. But I took the plasma, basically cut those off. They're they're not needed. So tons of weight there that we were able to shed. I'm just marking up Model A wishbone for the rear that I'll graft into the stock bottom of the radius arms. So that's probably how they're gonna sit. We're just gonna play with the front end now.
Okay, so this is the wishbone that we will use for the front of the car. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it is a 32. I believe it's a truck setup. That was, yeah, basically 32 truck. Obviously these have all been hacked off in its previous life from someone else. So what I'm gonna do is obviously just cut down here. This has got a great deal of length compared to the Model A one. I'll just actually grab one that's cut. Basically, that is stock Model A versus the 32. So you can see how much more length is there. So that'll definitely help with getting it a longer pivot point, and also to make sure the degree that we need for that front end. So what we're gonna do is split this now, and then we'll mock it up. And like I said before, I already have these prepped and in place. So I've already cut them, and I've just, you know, ground that nice kind of 45 degree. It's just to get a good penetration for when you're butt welding them together, I suppose. So those are ready to go. So let's get these cut.
When your love gets strong, when your love, it will break the fear. When your love gets wide, it will bring you near. And when your soul gets humble, pride loses meaning. And your days of trouble, they will end right here.
All right, so there we have our split wishbones that we will end up using. This one's just got a tiny bend in it, so I'm just gonna go and put that in the press and straighten that out. But basically what we have are these little weld-in bungs, tie rods, and mounts. These were from, I think they're from TCR Components over east, but yeah, I've bought lots of parts from them. They're usually really good. So basically that's gonna be, you know, a hole drilled in so we can rosette weld it. This will obviously be grounded back. We'll press these in, and that'll be the end of our tie rod. And as you can see again, there's the difference between the Model A and the 32. They are much longer, which is exactly what we want. So we're gonna straighten these out, clean them up with the wire wheel. All right, so this is a before and after. So basically, all we do is chamfer the edge, drill a hole top and bottom or side to side, and then just countersink it slightly, and that will be so we can plug weld the actual bung inside. So just to add a little bit more strength, and then we just clean it up with the orbital sander and the wire wheel as well. So we're gonna do this to the other side as well, just cleaning it up, and we'll drill the holes for this one. All right, so I got the front wishbone, right side tacked into, or not tacked into place, sorry, clamped into place. And what I'm gonna do now is actually tack it into place. So what I've kind of come up with is, I'll just turn you around and show you. Basically, I'm gonna just fix the mount on the bottom of the frame. And yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. And then I have beveled the edge. We've drilled a few holes on both sides for a nice rosette weld. And then basically this travels down and then meets up to the Model A, what would you call it? Wishbone end that goes to the axle. So there is a considerable difference between the size. So I will probably pie cut this and just move it up so it kind of flows into the bottom of that. And then what we will run into is drag link. I will have to bring this down underneath here, which is doable. So what I've done on the side here is I've just used a square off the side of the spindle with a degree finder on it, and I have exactly 7 degrees. So I think 7 degrees should be sufficient enough to what we're trying to achieve as far as caster angle goes, but we will be able to slightly adjust that with the adjustment we have in the tie rod. So we're gonna get this tacked in. All right, so we got the both wishbones tacked into place now. So what we're gonna do is just remove these and get them on the table. We'll finish welding them, blend them, and we might actually add a little fish plate just on the inside for a bit of rigidity. So yeah, what we're gonna do is just lift up the frame with the strap, take the weight off the front end, and we'll just pull those out and see what we can come up with. So they are considerably longer. Okay, so what we've achieved is basically we have our caster angle exactly where we want it. And this is Model A, this is 32 truck. So you can obviously see that this is considerably bigger than what this used to be. So we need to tie this into here, or pie cut the bottom of this and bring that taper in so it matches the plane of the bottom of this. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm gonna come up with yet. I might even just make a filler piece that sits in here. Otherwise I will cut this out and we can blend that. So we'll get them mocked up so they're both the exact same and hopefully make them look nice. Again, with this side, we've just V'd that out. So we will just run a really nice hot pass around that, and as well on the inside, and we'll rosette weld these two bits that will pick up the bung on the inside. So that's just allowing a bit more penetration on the bung itself where we've welded it in. So I think she'll look pretty good. All right, so what I've done is I found this square stock that I had from a previous job. And what I'm gonna do is just cut out 2 little wedges, and each wedge is actually just gonna sit in here, and I'll just fully weld it. So it'll just add a little bit more strength. So we're gonna put some safeties on and cut this out. Okay, so what I did here, I was gonna pie cut this, but honestly, I think this is gonna be sufficient enough. I'm gonna weld all that up, grind it smooth, you know, get nice penetration on both sides. And what these are just little wedges that I made. So basically, they will sit, get that shadow out of your way. MIG, TIG. Lots of penetration. Still smoking, actually. Yeah, just wanted to show that you can do both with both the MIG and the TIG. So I'll end up doing a couple more passes on this to kind of smooth everything out. All right. So as you can see, this one was the one that was MIG welded. And we're just gonna blend this, and I've kind of finished this one off. I did add just a little bit of silicon bronze just in here, so it did have tons of penetration. I did a few passes, and then basically that's kind of what we're trying to achieve, is something like that. So what I'll end up doing too probably is actually just making a little plate with a few you know, the rivets that we've kind of used on the chassis, and I'll just weld that on. Just a little fish plate, just to add a little bit more strength. I'm totally confident in the way that it is now, but I wouldn't mind just adding a little piece for aesthetics, as well as a little bit more rigidity. So we're gonna get this one all cleaned up to the same as that. We'll do a few passes with a little bit of silicon bronze just to smooth out those areas.
On the road, headed back to New Orleans, driving in the country past old-timey scenes. Big birds were singing in the tall willow trees, mighty fine. 3 words written on a paper bag: I miss you, was written in a message in black, thrown in a van 2,000 miles back. A better time how many souls and times that I've told of places that I'd wanna be, and how many days.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you something as well. I've showed it in previous videos, but using a little bit of silicon bronze just to kind of fill those areas. It's not actually part of the weld, if that makes sense. So I've already done 2 passes at a really good temperature. I was putting in, I think, like, I don't know, over 140, 150 amps. You know, but on the pedal though. So, but anyways, what I wanted to explain is those little roll-lock discs. If you cut, you know, when they're worn out, you cut them into a square, they're gonna be really nice for blending. So when you're on, you know, kind of on that surface, they like to flex a fair bit and you get a really nice blend. So as you can see, it's really bright right now because it's still super warm. But if we just grab the DA here, and I'll just quickly show you. So it virtually, you know, disappears. So you can kind of have like a really nice metal finish. And like I said before, the weld in there is extremely strong. We've done 2 passes and a fillet pass, and basically I've just used the silicon bronze just to smooth it out. And what I'll end up probably doing in the future is just making a really nice fish plate that will just kind of sit over top of these. But for now, we're getting there.
I'll meet you down the line.
All right, so that's it. Basically, finished product. Got our ends in. I didn't metal finish the ends of these. I don't really think it's necessary. I will end up, you know, giving these things a high build primer and sanding them anyway. So I'll probably just dip a little bit of filler in there. I could spend the time, but I just don't think I need to do it. But so I'm really happy with the way that those have turned out. Just with the blending and everything, I think they look really nice. So they kind of utilize that nice little step in. And like I had mentioned, I probably will end up putting a small little fish plate on here with maybe a few of those rivets that I've used on the chassis just to kind of tie everything in. But for now, we're just going to stick it in so we can keep going with the rest of it. Yeah, we'll see how they look.
Times that I've told, the places that I'd like to be, and how many days when I could have stayed instead of just getting up to leave. And given we make time.
About 7 degrees. That's perfect.
What do you want?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a good starting point. So, but how's that? We actually have clearance, which is kind of weird. Okay, so we got the split wishbones installed. I'm extremely happy with the way that these turned out. I'm sitting at about 6.5 to 7 degrees. So I may have to add just a little bit more, but we'll just kind of see once we get all the weight and everything on there. But at least it's a good starting point. But yeah, they've turned out exactly kind of how I imagined them to. If you come down here, you can see we have this really nice sweep that comes up into them. And yeah, and basically these sit exactly parallel to the frame. They're both at 0 degrees at the moment, which is really nice. So I think this is going to work out really well. I just got to obviously figure out the caster angle once we have the majority of all the body together and the weight in there, and myself included. And we'll be able to kind of see where we're at, but at least we got a really good gauge. Everything is locked in there. It's nice and square to the frame, which is awesome. So another job done. And you know, on to the rear. We'll get that drive shaft finished up. I got to make a sleeve to go over the internal bit, and then we'll get that welded up. We'll get the rear wishbones welded in as well, and then that's basically, you know, another job done. So make sure you guys like and subscribe, hit that notifications button as well, and again, let us know what you guys think in the comments. So we'll see you next week on more of the race car.
Down the line, we'll meet up down the